I'm Russ Rapp here talking about non-duality. People like stories, and I think sometimes when I talk about non-duality, it gets very cerebral and abstract, and I think, speakers that talk about things like non-duality that can bring it down into a personal context or kind of a grounded sense of these bigger ideas helps relay the message. And I think stories are another great way of trying to get this concept across. I think that part of the difficulty with non-duality and telling stories is that people avoid stories because when you talk about your story, it's your identity in a timeline progression, and people want to avoid that because we live our lives in stories in past, present, and future. And so when you talk about stories, it brings up this idea of an identity, an idea of me, and that's kind of what non-duality is trying to subvert in a sense. But we're going to talk about a story that I had from high school. And, not everyone I shouldn't say, but a lot of people in high school, you're growing up, you're learning boundaries, you're learning your identity, and people kind of define their life in different ways. That's where you have like cliques and stuff in high school. Everyone has probably seen a movie or experienced that kind of a thing. And that doesn't necessarily end later on in life, but that's where you're really trying to find yourself. And, I was the kind of person that, it's kind of cliche in saying that, but I enjoyed all sorts of people. And so I feel like I got along with a lot of different kind of people. But I remember seeing the people that would go out to the park and the rebels and smoke cigarettes and stuff, and thinking and this is generalizing and simplifying it, but those people are kind of playing the role. They're essentially the other side of the coin. So that's the people that are trying or want to be cool and fit in. They're trying to fit in another way. It's still just a bunch of trying to fit in, and that's part of growing up, I think, and that part of human development is just kind of natural. But as we grow, we all build boundaries, walls, separation, and that's can be a positive and a negative thing. If you think of it from a cellular level, if we didn't have cell walls, our cytoplasm would spill all over the place. So I think healthy boundaries are good. But then there's sometimes, whether you've been hurt or whether you've, gone through something or whatever in your life, even if you've had a pretty easy life, just comparatively, we still can build up walls of separation and get a sense that, well, this person, this group thinks they're better than me, or I think I'm better than them, or I don't fit in, and that sort of thing. And I think a lot of us go through that. So the story I wanted to tell right now is just a really quick one, but it relates to non-duality in this respect, and I'll get to that in a second. But we were on a choir trip down to Disney World, and I think this was before I think I missed the memo that we were not supposed to scream and yell on the rides before we had to sing the next day, but I remember losing my voice and kind of mouthing half the higher notes. But I was sharing a hotel room with three other guys that were, I guess, were they juniors at the time? I can't remember what year I went. I must have been a senior. So they were a year younger. And there wasn't really anything that stood out in that moment, but I remember we were getting ready to go to dinner, and I was in the bathroom, and I like showers and long showers, and spending time in the bathroom because that's kind of your time to get away, time to think and stuff like that. But I was in there, and I don't know what had happened. It kind of came out of nowhere, but as I opened the bathroom door, my friend Dan was there, and he was kind of a class clown. He's a super nice, cool guy. But he was just kind of standing in the door waiting to come in or something, and he looked at me and gave this big smile, and all of a sudden I just started breaking down crying, and he kind of looked at me like, what's going on? What's happening? And I was in there, so then I walk out, and they're like, oh my God, something's wrong. And at that point, it was before cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone, so it's not like I got some sort of side message that they weren't aware of. But I just remember kind of laying down on the bed, just kind of crying for, a good 5 minutes or so. And they were asking me what was wrong, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong. I can't tell you. And I probably wasn't doing much talking. But it passed, and it was kind of the sense that, like, there was this restriction, this barrier, this wall that I think I had built up, and kind of out of nowhere, it wasn't like something happened and all of a sudden, like, there was this release, but it was just all out of the blue. There was just kind of this emotional release, and I just remember getting this sense of peace and calmness, and going to dinner and kind of seeing people in a different light. And that was basically the story. It's one of those moments that you probably have had a few of these in your life where you just don't forget, and it's kind of mundane in telling the story, but it's one of those things that always stick with me. And I think, and there's probably other times that were similar I could talk about, but just trying to keep this short. I think how that relates to non-duality is a lot of times we build up these walls of separation and BS, and really non-duality, the message of non-duality is just essentially to say, hey, there's a wall. Not that you have to tear it down or do anything about it, but hey, there's a wall, because your mind or your separate self, whatever you want to call it, your ego, wants to always say, well, okay, I see the wall, we'll get rid of that one. And then there's another wall, or you build another one, or it's already there from years ago, and well, there's no wall there anymore. Everything's fine, but there's always a wall. There always will be a wall. So that's what non-duality is trying to get across. The basis of the freedom of the wall-less world is, or as John Lennon would say, in his Imagine song, imagine there's no countries and everything. That was kind of the essence of what he's trying to say in that, is the lack of boundaries. But it's also saying that boundaries aren't a bad thing, but it's the recognition of the boundaries, and then that points to the direction of freedom. So hope you enjoyed this story. Until next time, peace.